O maindu karatane ane muhattane dini lampere pondre etrane nandi mahandane jnana kurundane ponde vaita di putro indrene yastyakva rupamadhyam prabhavadi jagato nekada nugrahaya prakshina klesharashira vishama vishadaro nekavaktra subhogi sarvajnana prasutirbushaka parikara priteye yasya nityam Devo hisha savo vyacita vimalatano yogado yoga yuktaha yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena Tam pravaram muninam patanjalim pranjariranatosmi Abahu purushakaram shankachakrasidharinam Sasrashirasham shvetam pranamami patanjalim Shrimate Anantaya Nagarajaya Namo Namaha Asmadacharyebhyo Sarvebhyo Namo Namaha Om. All right, thanks again. Now, if we look at Ramaswamy Sir's representations, here is from his 2000 publication, Yoga for the Three Stages of Life. I'll stop share to show the book itself. Hang on. So here, Yoga for the Three Stages of Life. It's an absolute gem of a book. It's actually my favorite book on yoga, but again, I mean, I may be biased, but take a look at this book. It's so thorough, so packed full of wisdom. He's very generous with how much he shares, Ramaswamy Sir. And it's a book that covers a variety of things. It covers Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. First of all, he has a chapter where he talks about his studies with his acharya, Sri Tirumalai Krishnamacharya. And then after he gets into classical theory of yoga as according to Patanjali, the Yoga Sutra, even giving some indication to the Sankhya philosophy, and also how Vyasa commentary brings up Sankhya philosophy in a big way, and in no small part also just bringing attention to Vedic perspective in general. So this is something that's integral to Krishnamacharya, this whole Vedic understanding. And now with this, I'll also bring up this aspect of the full prostration. So up until now, we haven't seen the full prostration in terms of the Surya Namaskar representations. Again, I'll go back to the documentary during the centenary celebrations of Sri T. Krishnamacharya's in 1988. There's a scene where the professor's son, TKV Deshikacharya, along with his colleague A.G. Mohan, are prostrating before the professor before they begin their lesson. They're prostrating as is customary in India. So this they're not doing in a slow fashion. They're just doing it quickly. But you could see this is you get a glimpse of what the full prostration is that I'm getting at. It's the same kind of movement you see at temples.
Every lesson follows an unalterable pattern. the student prostrates himself before his master. He blocks his ears when he's saying his own name, because to hear his own name would boost his ego. Prayers recited together put the student and the teacher on the same wavelength, creating the proper atmosphere for studying. Usually, the passing on of knowledge is a private matter between teacher and student. One mouth, two ears. Mantra Om is so sacred that his name must not be taken lightly because he represents God himself. Protect us both, make us happy, give us the strength to work, enlighten our study. Let us not grow to hate each other. The commentary of a passage from the
So now, in relation to Vedic ritual and how prostration verily is part of that, there's even a segment of this documentary where it is shown photographs. Krishnamacharya was photographed depicting different gestures as part of the Vedic ritual called Sandhya Vandanam. So let me go to that segment. So now, watch.
These photographs were taken to show the different gestures and the positions used in what is known as the Sandhya Vandanam. That is the daily prayer to the sun. One has to squat for taking the water, to do the pranayama, to take the water, to offer the water to the sun. At certain points, one has to stand and do the pranayama. And then the gestures, which you saw, the mudras, and then offering the water to the different gods. You can see the thread is exactly in the same position as usual. And then nyasa, touching the different parts of the body with the mantras. And then you can see, for example,
so here you could see the full prostration over here. If I move this stuff here, the full prostration is photographed here. It's part of this ritual process. One performs pranayama. This is a ritual process that children of 7 are initiated into. So even children of 7 are initiated into practice of pranayama and ritual prayer and meditation on sacred Vedic mantra.
Japa. When you do japa, the counting should not be exhibited. So always a towel is kept to hide the finger which is counting the japa.
Or the mala beads, depending.
It is said that without the sandhya, the twilight ritual, the sun wouldn't rise. In order to encourage breathing, some water must be drunk. Then several drops must be sprinkled as an offering to the sun, whilst reciting the Gayatri. This prayer, strictly reserved for the Brahmins, also symbolizes the goddess of solar energy. O divine sunlight, may we have you with us to guide our thoughts. The Gayatri is to be recited 108 times, or at least a dozen or so, accompanied and followed by a series of strictly codified gestures or mudras. The professor would never dream of skipping through a ritual. The rigorous exactness and strict observance of the smallest of details are the only guarantees of the ritual's effectiveness and of keeping up tradition.
I think my father also had taken my first son.
So anyways, you can see how significant this is for the professor, the Vedic ritual. And Ramaswamy sir actually published a very nice article on it. I'll pull it up. I'm not speaking as someone that's actually initiated into this ritual, so I can't speak to it in any great detail. I know a part of it. I was taught a small entry part of it, and also adapted ritual procedures that derive in this kind of ritual practice. The nyasas, the gestures, which are essentially kind of like mudras. If you think so, the word nyasa means placement, and these gestures are part of this prayer, and they're accompanied by mantras, supporting mantras that eventually are leading you to this act of sitting and counting the mantras as you meditate upon the mantra. And then after, there's a process that leads you out of the japa. Pranayama is verily a part of this whole process. There's nyasas, there's pranayama, and the act of vinyasa is a combination of the prefix vi and the word nyasa. Nyasa we see is placement. In the Vedic scenario, it's the different positions, placements that one can touch, one can even just bring your attention to without necessarily the touch, but it is a support by using the touch of the hand for the tactile sensation, and with the supporting mantra. Again, samantraka practice. Pranayama itself being done, samantraka. And so the prefix vi indicates that it's a particular placement. Vishesha nyasa. That's what becomes vinyasa. So this is where this system is essentially coming from. Vinyasa, krama, in steps. There's a progression, step by step, and then there's also a procedure to counterbalance to come out. So I'll go back to this. Actually, I'll show this article for you for the first time. The PDF screen share now of this article by Srivatsa Ramaswamy, my teacher, where he outlines the basic procedure for the mornings, the morning Sandhya Vandanam, because there's different variations depending on the time of day. You can practice Sandhya ritual 3 or 4 times a day. Here, what's indicated is the morning version. So this is the full prostration. Indeed, this is what one might ask, isn't this what is missing from all of these other representations of Surya Namaskar? This indeed must be integrated into the sequence. Some people may be skittish about religious matters, atheists, Westerners predominantly. In India, religiosity is something innate in the culture. So there's a sense of reverence and devotion that's very ingrained, is deep into the culture. So this act of prostration is an act of humility, and it's not something foreign to people in India. So in any case, this is an integral gesture that you see in the Sandhya Vandanam. So there's all different mantras that are indicated, supporting mantras with the various acts: sprinkling the water, sipping the water, offering this water, the placements, different places where you're touching, and doing so with supporting mantras. Again, pranayama with mantra. This Ramaswamy Sir teaches the pranayama with the mantra. It's the way he teaches it is with the ratio of 1-4-2. So with a inhale retention. So again, he was explaining to us that even children of 7 are introduced to the practice of pranayama. Children of 7, as part of their initiation into even this ritual process in India. So the ratio ends up being 1:4:2. The classical texts, in fact, the Hatha texts often, when they talk about the 1:4:2 ratio, they talk about a certain measurement of time in terms of 16 counts for the puraka being the inhale, and then the 64 counts for the, what gets the count though? Is it a second? What is it? The 64 counts, I'll get to that in a second, but 64 counts for the puraka kumbhaka, so that's the antar kumbhaka, the inhale retention. And then, so that's quadruple the length of the inhale, 1:4, and then 32 counts, that's half of the inhale retention or double of the inhale itself, 32 counts for the rechaka, the exhalation itself. So that's 16, 64, and 32. 1:4:2 ratio. And the way Ramaswamy Sir explains it, that the mantra is recited mentally on the inhale retention, and the mantra itself has 64 syllables. So you can think of it that way, that the inhale is a certain duration of time. It should be 1/4 of what the retention will be. And then once you're holding the breath after inhalation, you're reciting the mantra that is 64 syllables. And then after you exhaling the air out for half the duration that the retention was. Ratio of 1:4:2. I won't get into the specifics about this at this time, but know that this is the general process. And it utilizes the Gayatri mantra along with the vyahritis, these different kinds of potent sounds, along with pranava, that's Om, and it ends with the Shiras portion. In any case, all sorts of nyasas with mantras and pranayama, of course, acts of offering to the divine. Again, this is where Surya Namaskar is coming from. Vedic mantras like Surya Namaskar, Om Ujjanadya Mitra Mahaha Arohanuttaram Divam Hridrogam Mama Surya. You know, these Vedic mantras, they're accompanied by prostration, of course. It's implied. And as you can see, Vedic ritual is replete with gestures or positions, mudras as such. And then there's even the prostrating to different directions, the guardians of each direction, and making the full prostration on the ground as such. So I'll stop this screen share now. So let's go to the presentation by Ramaswamy Sir in Yoga for the Three Stages of Life. So here Surya Namaskar is indicated. Here, instead of, he's calling it the fourth movement because the way he's counting it, he's counting Samastiti as the first. So the mantra starts there. So what you would do after Uttanasana, what you would call the third position, Trini, is inhale, look up. Here is not on inhale, you would take that extra inhale, and then this squat is done on exhale. That would be the movement that the subsequent movement that follows Uttanasana. So this is the Purna Utkatasana, the complete Utkatasana, but with the hands on the floor. And this, incidentally, I drew your attention to the jump back in any case earlier that we saw. Notice that naturally people will bend even slightly in order to jump back. It helps you spring back. Of course, not everyone has to jump back. You can step back. But bending the knees more explicitly as such helps in this act of then springing back to jump back. Coming to Chaturanga Dandasana, this danda, the staff. And then coming to lie completely prone in Danda Samarpana, this actual prostrating pose for the Surya Namaskar. The sequence is in a particular order in this book, but then after he teaches it in a different order in his later book. So Yoga for 3 Stages of Life, 2000. In this later book, it's from 2005, the complete book of Vinyasa Yoga. This is how I learned it as according to the sequence in this book. So you could see Chaturanga Dandasana is the transition to the sixth position. That's the middle of the sequence, right? The actual prostration. The middle of the sequence is where you were trying to get to. Then it's all an act of trying to get back to the starting position. So Chaturanga Dandasana acts as a transition between step 6 and step 7. Here, what's indicated is step 7 is Adho Mukha Svanasana. Then step 8 is Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. And then step 9, one is repeating Adho Mukha Svanasana. And then jumping forward again to the squatting position, counting that instead of necessarily explicitly counting the inhale, look forward. Here the picture is indicated, but the way Ramaswamy tends to teach, he doesn't actually always explicitly give the inhale, look forward. You can do inhale, exhale with the head down. One can do the concave phase, inhale, look forward if you'd like, but it's not typically the way Ramaswamy Sir teaches it. In any case, the more explicit movement being the bent knees, the Purna Utkatasana, the full Utkatasana, full squat. And in any case, if you're jumping forward from Adho Mukha Svanasana, again, one naturally will bend the knees upon landing. So coming to a more explicit full squat, it's aiding in the process of jumping forward to like earlier we saw, it's aiding in the process of springing back, and then also in jumping forward to land with bent knees as such, and counting this as a position unto itself. And Uttanasana, and then coming up to Tadasana. So when the arms are raised, this is what Krishnamacharya calls Tadasana. If you raise the heels as well, that's another variation of Tadasana. And then lowering the arms, Samastiti. Whereas, well, before I say the variation that Ramaswamy later would teach, he also explains here the use of the mantras in Surya Namaskar. I'll actually read this passage here. As mentioned earlier, the Sun Salute or Surya Namaskara is a very popular and dynamic group or sequence of exercises. Actually, the dog postures are important vinyasas in Surya Namaskar. The following table outlines the vinyasas and mantras used in the sequence of the Surya Namaskara. The sixth vinyasa is the actual Namaskara, in which one lies down prone, prostrate, with the arms stretched overhead in total surrender to the deity, here the sun, considered a visible aspect of God. The 12 vinyasas can be done with mantras also. Thus, as one completes the appropriate aspect of the breath, the mantra is mentally chanted, and then the next vinyasa is done, and the appropriate mantra is used. The mantras used are Bijakshara, Vedic or Vaidika and Laukika mantras. It is also a custom to chant all three mantras, one after the other again. Those who are unable to do the whole Vinyasa Krama of the Surya Namaskar can merely chant the mantras and prostrate themselves in the direction of the sun in the east. Like we saw initially how Deshikachara and Mohan were prostrating in front of their teacher. Those who do the Aruna chanting or Vedic prayer, deriving from the Krishna Yajur Veda, it's a Vedic prayer of Surya. He mentions it in an earlier chapter. They would do the Vinyasa Krama Surya Namaskar at the end of each of the 32 Anuvakas, each of the 32 paragraphs of this extensive portion of the Vedas, the Yajur Veda. And this would take about an hour of chanting of the Surya Namaskar. It's a chapter in itself. It takes an hour to chant alone. If you start to do prostration in between, it adds some time, of course. So here are the vinyasas and their associated mantras. So of course it's Om Haram Udyanadya Mitra Mahaha Mitraya Namaha. Om Hrim Arohanuttaram Divam Ravaye Namaha. Om Hrum Hridrogam Mama Surya Suryaya Namaha. Om Hraim Harimananshanaashaya Bhanave Namaha. Om Hraum Shukeshu Me Harimanam Kagaya Namaha. Om Hraha Ropanaka Sudadhamasi Pushne Namaha. Om Hram Ato Haridraveshu Me Hiranyagarbhaya Namaha. Om Hrim Harimana Ninadhamasi Marichaye Namaha. Om Hrum Udagadayamadittyaha Adityaya Namaha. Om Hraim Vishvena Sahasasaha Savitre Namaha. Om Hraum Dvishantam Mamarandayane Arkaya Namaha. Om Hraha Mo Aham Vishato Radham Bhaskaraya Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So there's meanings that go along with the mantras. Of course, it refers to the sun, that's the benevolent friend in the sky, the one that moves through space. It appears to move through space according to us from our vantage point. Of course, we are moving in relation to the sun. The sun itself is moving through our galaxy. And it's also alluding to the sun being the one that dispels illness from us, the illness that surrounds the heart, which could be physiological or figuratively speaking, the illness that covers the heart. The sun is the dispeller of darkness, the one that brings light. It's a beautiful mantra. So now, as deriving from Ramaswamy Sir's 2005 publication, The Complete Book of Vinyasa Yoga, here it is. I encourage you all to get these books. Again, my personal favorite is the other, Yoga for the Three Stages of Life. It has so much information. It contains some information on the sequences, but a lot of information on various other subjects of relevance in the practice of yoga, like covering what the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali is talking about in a practical way, how it contextually explains all of the sadhana, where asana and pranayama, of course, fit in, and it's all leading to, in steps, krama, to the process of meditation. In any case, I'll go back to the screen share. So this is a Surya Namaskar described in this book. So this is the way I learned it from him. So there would be counting of the first position, Samastiti, as Ekam. He doesn't usually use the Sanskrit counts, but I'll just use it just as a something that may be easier for the Ashtanga Vinyasa practitioners to follow as they're used to. So Ekam being the first position here, then Dve, inhale. I know it's opposite to what you might be used to. Dve, even number usually being the exhale. Then the third position. And then what would follow, instead of inhale, look up, it's actually the following exhale coming to the squat, which you're looking forward by that point. If not slightly down with the chin lowered. And then you're jumping back. And you'll do the Chaturanga Dandasana in order to then place yourself completely lying prone, the actual prostration here, and the hands in Namaskar. I also grabbed this photograph because the other option of prostration can be rather from Chaturanga Dandasana, moving then to what a lot of people refer to as Balasana, with the hands forward. You can have the palms together in Namaskar. In that case, it's not pictured there, but this verily could be utilized as the position for prostration as well. And then subsequently doing Chaturanga Dandasana again, followed by Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, Adho Mukha Svanasana, and then jump forward, landing with bent knees, Utkatasana, and then Uttanasana, and then coming up, Tadasana, and then ending with Samastiti. And in this way, it may resemble in some fashion Surya Namaskar A, if you will, from Ashtanga Vinyasa, in that there's no additional Adho Mukha Svanasana at the start necessarily. It occurs in the same sequence that you are familiar with, Chaturanga Dandasana to Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, and then Adho Mukha Svanasana. There's just the additional Chaturanga Dandasana that you initially jump to. You're not jumping to Adho Mukha Svanasana. You're jumping to what you normally would in Ashtanga Vinyasa, jumping back to Chaturanga Dandasana. But incidentally, before moving on to Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, including the prostration, whether you do Danda Samarpana or the prostration in Balasana, then you follow again Chaturanga Dandasana, and you follow with the subsequent poses, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, Adho Mukha Svanasana, and then come forward and stand up. Right? So I'll read this last part that Ramaswamy writes in this book. You may do few Surya Namaskaras at a time, always taking care to see that your breathing does not get hurried. Doing too many Surya Namaskaras in succession is not recommended in yoga. In fact, in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika of Swatmarama, is considered the Bible of all Hatha yogis, the author Swatmarama gives a list of do's that are helpful for progress in yoga and don'ts that are detrimental to yoga. Quoting another great yogi, Gorakshanata, Swatmarama forbids yogis from doing activities that are painful and injurious. So, kaya klesha is detrimental kaya to the body. And the commentator, Brahmananda, so the commentator to the great yoga treatise, gives examples of what constitutes kaya klesha. He warns against weightlifting and too many sun salutations. Sun salutations done in moderation, however, are excellent exercises for the body, breath, and mind. So this reminder not to do excessive performance of Surya Namaskar. So not trying to do 108 Surya Namaskars, you know. Anyways, Let's watch a video of this. So I'll stop share. So as according to what's found actually on Ramaswamy's YouTube channel, here's an example, or let me go to the other version first. Wait. I'll take this one. Okay. I'll share a screen. So this is what Ramaswamy sir jokingly refers to as Surya Namaskar M. M as in Mike. Actually, M as in male. He doesn't restrict the procedure of doing this full prostration, lying prone, strictly for men, but it's traditionally seen that the lying prone is the prostration that men take, and doing balasana, or like the child's pose with the hands in namaskar, is the prostration that women typically take, traditionally speaking. But in class, he instructs both men and women to perform the prone position as a variation, and also the men and women can try the one coming to the child's pose, balasana. But anyways, here he refers to them as Surya Namaskar M and Surya Namaskar F, the male and female versions. So here is a Surya Namaskar M. So, and also here I'll indicate that he teaches us to utilize kumbhakas for each of the asanas, and you're mentally reciting the mantras. Of course, you could chant it aloud like you saw in the example from Deshikachar. But here Ramaswamy teaches us to use kumbhaka. It becomes more challenging. Not everyone can do it this way. You can do it aloud instead, or do it mentally, but without the breath retention. So during the movement. In any case, this is an indicating the kumbhakas where the mantras would be mentally recited.
ॐ ह्रां उद्यन्नद्य मित्रमहः मित्राय नमः.
So that's Ekam.
ॐ ह्रीं आरोहन्नुत्तरां दिवं रवये नमः.
That's Dwe.
ॐ ह्रूं
That's Trini.
हृद्रोगं मम सूर्याय नमः.
So there's an inhale before you exhale.
ॐ ह्रैं हरिमाणञ्च नाशय भानवे नमः.
That would be Chatwari here. And then
ॐ
Pancha.
ह्रौं शुकेषु मे हरिमाणं खगाय नमः.
Now lie prone. Shut, the sixth position.
ॐ ह्रः रोपणाकाशु दद्मसि पूष्णे नमः.
Now the seventh position, Sapta.
ॐ ह्रां अथो हारिद्रवेषु मे हिरण्यगर्भाय नमः. ॐ ह्रीं हरिमाणं निदद्मसि मरीचये नमः.
Ashto, and then after Nava.
ॐ ह्रूं उदगादयमादित्यः आदित्याय नमः.
Take a breath, then exhale. Hold the breath to jump forward.
ॐ ह्रैं विश्वेन सहसा सह सवित्रे नमः.
Then Ekadasha,
ॐ
11.
ह्रौं द्विषन्तं मम रन्धयन् अर्काय नमः.
And then the 12th position, Dwadasha.
ॐ ह्रः मोहं द्विषतो रथं भास्कराय नमः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
So, what was I going to say about that? So you can see with the example from Deshikachar teachings or Ramaswamy sir, the breath is quite a bit longer than the previous examples in Ashtanga Vinyasa or in Iyengar Yoga. The movements are slower as such. It's a minimum of 5 counts. Sometimes it could be longer than 5 counts. So whereas maybe let's average out that Patabi Joyce was instructing mostly 4 seconds for each movement, sometimes 3 seconds, 4 seconds. In Iyengar Yoga, it tends to be maybe 3 seconds each movement, sometimes even 2 seconds. Here, the minimum in Dashikachara teachings and Ramaswamy teachings, it tends to be a minimum of 5 seconds, could be 4 seconds, but really the minimum 5 seconds, if not longer. And allowing some instances where you do have unequal ratio in that the exhalation gets lengthened. Certain movements, the forward folding movement may lend itself to a longer exhalation as such. So let me share a screen for the second variation, Surya Namaskar F for female. So here we go.
ॐ ह्रां उद्यन्नद्यमित्रमहः मित्राय नमः ॐ ह्रीं आरोहन्नुत्तरां दिवं रवये नमः
She moves a little quicker.
ॐ ह्रूं हृद्रोगं मम सूर्याय नमः ॐ ह्रैं हरिमाणञ्च नाशय भानवे नमः ॐ ह्रौं शुकेषु मे हरिमाणं खगाय नमः
The palms could
ॐ
be
ह्रः
together.
रोपणाकाशु दद्मसि पूष्णे नमः ॐ ह्रां अथो हारिद्रवेषु मे हिरण्यगर्भाय नमः ॐ ह्रीं हरिमाणं निदद्मसि मरीचये नमः ॐ ह्रूं उदगादयमादित्यः आदित्याय नमः ॐ ह्रैं विश्वेन सहसा सह सवित्रे नमः ॐ ह्रौं द्विषन्तं मम रन्धयन् अर्काय नमः ॐ ह्रः मोहं द्विषतो रथं भास्कराय नमः ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
So I'll stop share now. So now we could watch the example of Paschimottanasana, as Ramaswamy teaches. So here what you'll see is a lead-in sequence similar to what you would expect in Ashtanga Vinyasa. Usually he teaches it according to the sequence that we saw for Surya Namaskar, minus the prostration, because at this point it's just meant as a transitional sequence from point A to point B, the prostration only being explicitly there as in the scenario of the actual Surya Namaskar sequence. But here in this representation, it's actually from 1980. The student jumps back, not to Chaturanga Dandasana. It's interesting because his book, he's indicating jumping back to Chaturanga Dandasana, but here the student will jump back to Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. And it's like in Krishnamacharya's Yoga Makaranda, when we looked at the description, he did seem to indicate one can jump from Uttanasana straight to Urdhva Mukha Svanasana rather than having to do Chaturanga Dandasana necessarily before doing Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. And then also he indicated that you can jump rather to Adho Mukha Svanasana, which of course is what we see in Iyengar Yoga, at least in the later iterations of Surya Namaskar in Yoga, Iyengar Yoga. So let me share the video. So this is from 1980, one of Ramaswamy's students performing a variety of postures from the Paschimottanasana sequence. There's like, it's a category, a group where they're symmetrical seated forward bending type movements. The legs are symmetrically, is what I mean. So, and with this lead in to the ground, and then only doing a return sequence to Samastiti at the very end after completing a group, these postures together as a group. So here we go.
Next sequence, inhale, raise your arms, interlock your fingers. We start from Samastiti, all the sequences. Exhale, get to Utkatasana, the squat position.
So she's moving rather straight to the squat is another option.
Exhale, place the palms by the side of the feet, keep the head down, jump back, jump to Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, the upward facing dog position. Exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog position, and then exhale, hold the breath.
Slow movement.
Jump through to Dandasana, the stick posture. This is the starting point of all seated postures. Inhale, raise your arms, interlock your fingers.
See Dandasanas with the hands on the ground.
Down. This is called Paschima Uttanasana. Paschima means posterior, Uttana means to stretch. This is a posture where you can stay for a long period of time, short inhalation, but a very, very long, smooth exhalation.
So unequal ratio.
The texts say that you can stay there, Vaset, you can stay there for a long period of time.
Vaset, the word in the Hatha Pradipika, stay.
Up to 5 to 10 minutes you can stay. It is supposed to be very good for the lower abdomen and some of the pelvic organs. Okay, inhale, return to Dandasana position. There is one more variation in this. Exhale, turn to one side and then bend down.
So a variation, a twisted
You can stay there for a
Paschimottanasana.
few breaths,
Parivritti.
twisting a little more on every exhalation.
Of course, it's a demonstration, so they're not staying very long.
Inhale, return to Dandasana position.
And here, they don't bother to
There is a counter pose for this.
demonstrate
This is
on the
called
second side.
Purvottanasana, the anterior stretch pose.
So the
Feet are on the floor.
second side's not shown.
Inhale,
It's a
raise the
demonstration.
Push the pelvis up. Exhale, return to Dandasana position. Now the next one is called Chatushpada Pitam, this table pose. Inhale,
So another variation.
exhale.
So rather inhale to lift up and then exhale to come down.
Next one is called Navasana, boat pose. This is good for the lower abdomen. You are able to strengthen the lower abdominal muscles. Exhale, bend your knees. Inhale onto your feet in Utkatasana. Next inhalation, Uttanasana. Interlock your fingers. Inhale back to Samasthiti, and then exhale, lower your arms. This sequence is Paschimottanasana. There are more variations, but we have done a few.
Okay. So, and a note about jumping to the other pose other than Chaturanga Dandasana. Like I said, it's mentioned in Yoga Makaranda, one can do that. Although today, mostly what we see is jump back to Chaturanga Dandasana, then move to Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. But I'll also show something interesting from the 1938 demonstration with a young BKS Iyengar, where he shows a lot of the jumping movements. Look what he's transitioning from. Remember, Yoga Makaranda indicates one jumps to the seated postures from Adho Mukha Svanasana, and the sequence that Krishnamacharya gives in Yoga Makaranda is much like what we see in Pattabhi Joyce's later presentation of Ashtanga Vinyasa. One necessarily would jump back to Chaturanga Dandasana, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, then Adho Mukha Svanasana, and then jump forward. But here, interestingly enough, 4 years after the publication of Krishnamacharya's book, BKS Iyengar is not demonstrating strictly following that, but using the variations that Krishnamacharya indicates that you can jump back to Urdhva Mukha Svanasana straight away or whatnot. So let's see. So he kind of skipped Adho Mukha Svanasana and went straight to the seated posture. It's not typically what we do today, and it's not exactly what's indicated in Yoga Makaranda, but it seems to follow in that logic that you can vary which one jumps to, what one necessarily jumps to. In any case, we've seen these. There's another instance where he's looking at the side plank. Let's see how he comes out in any case. Chaturanga Dandasana, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, and then the film gets abridged. Jumping from Adho Mukha Svanasana to arm balance, Ashtavakrasana. Then another series of postures, back bending. Otherwise, having to do with the jumping. And this is from the head balance. There was an interesting one there in any case. What happens? Uttanasana. And then he comes up. So he seemed to have jumped back to a plank and then straight away went to the side plank and Vashisthasana. And then instead of doing Chaturanga Dandasana, going to Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, Adho Mukha Svanasana, which he did with a bit with the bent arms, which is a bit like that extra dip down. Second side, Vashisthasana. And then Urdhva Mukha Svanasana to Vaishvamitrasana instead of doing from Adho Mukha Svanasana like we normally would do today. And Ekapada Kamdinyasana to Chaturanga Dandasana, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. And then instead of doing Adho Mukha Svanasana again, going straight away to the second side, Vishwamitrasana. Anyways, we'll stop share. If I go to the share screen to show the chapter really quickly, the chapter we see in Ramaswami's book in regard to the Paschimottanasana sequence. So you'll see the sequence, the transitional sequence to come to the floor. It'll be much like we saw in his representation of Surya Namaskar, minus the full prostration, as merely meant as a transitional sequence. So ekam inhale, dve exhale, then you'll take an inhale, and Trini will actually be the squat. And then inhale there, hold the breath. So the breath holding in order to do the kumbhakas. This is also indicated in Krishnamacharya's Yoga Makaranda, holding the breath in order to do the jump, the jumping movements on kumbhaka. So inhale, hold the breath, and then jump back to Chaturanga Dandasana, Chatwari, exhale, and then Pancha, inhale, and then Shat, exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And then you could stay there for a couple of breaths. Then what he indicates, exhale, hold the breath out, and you jump forward. Come to Utpluti Dandasana, but balancing with the weight lifted. Then you lower down Dandasana proper. Then you could do Dandasana with the arms overhead. You can enter Paschimottanasana from a lying down position or from the seated position. He gives these two options. Different ways of holding the feet. Even doing the twisted Paschimottanasana that we saw both sides. Different arm variations, Hasta Vinyasas. You don't have to do them all like an Ashtanga Vinyasa series. You can choose different variations you want to work on. The arms behind the back have a particular function. So it's not like that you have to necessarily do every single variation. You may choose to pick a different Hasta Vinyasa that works for a particular function as such. So here the logic he's operating from is that the legs remain in a symmetrical manner, but you spread the feet little ways apart to then perform Kurmasana, Supta Kurmasana. In any case, one can do the counter pose, Purvottanasana. Usually one would enter the side plank like we saw Iyengar demonstrate from a dog pose. But here he's showing an alternate entrance, can be from the seated position. Otherwise, one can do the counter pose with the bent legs. He calls that Chatush Parapitam. Alternate or variations, raising one leg. One can do Navasana. From there, one can move to Ubhaya Parangushtasana and the Urdhva Mukha Paschimottanasana, the upward facing Paschimottanasana. He's also indicating anytime you feel short of breath, you could take rest. In Shavasana. Also legs in a symmetrical fashion, except spread even wider than Kurmasana, Upavishta Konasana. And you can bend forward with the hands forward. These such variations with the hands forward, you don't see that in Ashtanga Vinyasa. You can hold the feet, and it's not incorrect to hold the big toes for Upavishta Konasana. The Ashtanga Vinyasa dogma, I'll say sometimes, is that, Upavishta Konasana, you must hold the outside of the feet, but there's photographs of Krishnamacharya holding the big toes. The professor cannot be wrong. It's just variations depending on what is applicable to the individual, what sort of stretch you're working on, what's your intention. Indeed, the big toes are significant in any case. There's a marmasthana in the big toes themselves, so there could be the indication to hold the big toes rather than the heels or the sides of the foot for that purpose. Otherwise, bending to one of the legs, again, variations that are not in Ashtanga Vinyasa, or like different Hasta Vinyasa, like the hands behind the back, or doing an open twist to the one leg and then the other leg. Iyengar teaches these variations, and evidently you can see Krishnamacharya demonstrating these variations. But these variations of Upavishta Konasana don't appear in any of the Ashtanga Vinyasa series. Then a counter pose from Upavishta Konasana with the feet spread apart as such. Then spread it. The logic here is then spreading the feet wider. Again, you don't have to do all of these variations as like an Ashtanga Vinyasa series. You can pick different variations you're working on in a given day's practice. Although Paschimottanasana is given prime importance, it's an important historical posture that one can stay for a long period of time. And all of these acharyas are emphasizing it, along with the Viparita Karani, the inverted mudras. So spreading the feet even wider, here's the logic from Upavishta Konasana, now spreading the feet as wide as possible to come to Samakonasana. You can counterpose that. The legs were straight for a long time. You can bend the knees, Baddha Konasana. Then there's just different variations given. And then necessarily a transition sequence to come back up to Samastiti, the return series. So lift up to Utpluti, jump back, Chaturanga Dandasana. Let's say if you want to call it according to the Ekam inhale, Dve exhale, Trini, inhale, hold the breath, and Chatwari, exhale, Chaturanga Dandasana. Pancha, inhale, look up. He also teaches you could do Urdhva Mukha Svanasana with the head down. In fact, the photograph in Yoga Makaranda, Krishnamacharya is showing with the head down with a mild Jalandhar Bandha. And then Shat position, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Then Sapta, you're jumping through. And then Ashto is holding the big toes or just stretching the spine in any case. And Nava, ninth position, is when you're actually in Paschimottanasana. Now, you can do different variations. And then the return sequence. So Dasha, lift the spine, and then exhale, hands down. Utpluti, Ekadasha, and then Dvadasha, so Chatwari, like the fourth position, Chaturanga Dandasana, and then Trayodasha, 13th position, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, and then Chaturdasha, 14th position, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And then, so here you exhale, hold the breath out, and walk or jump forward, if you will. Staying in the squat with the held breath, and that's the Panchadasha, 15th position, and then inhale, straighten the legs, exhale, and stay in Uttanasana. So that's Shodasha, and then inhale, raise your arms, Tadasana. So this is Saptadasha, unless I miscounted, and then exhale, lower your arms, Samastiti. Yeah. This is interesting. Is a dynamic, moving sequence that Ramaswamy teaches. He calls it Halasana Paschimottanasana sequence. In fact, the same sequence and the nomenclature is seen in Iyengar Yoga. So here you can move from the supine position to the Paschimottanasana, or moving from Halasana to Paschimottanasana, Halasana Paschimottanasana sequence. Or you can move from Halasana, plow pose, to the Uttana Kurmasana, the upward looking, the Uttana Mayurasana, the upward looking peacock, and then from there move back to the Halasana, plow pose. So they work on opposites. This is they're both like a flexion of the spine, but here you see Halasana flexion and then alternates with a kind of a counter movement to the Uttana Kurmasana, which is the extension of the spine, and then jumping back to Halasana, which is the flexion of the spine. So if I go back to that page in the Iyengar, the Iyengar Way book by Silva Mehta, the pupil of BKS Iyengar and Gita Iyengar. This is exactly the sequence that Iyengar teaches as is depicted here. Paschimottanasana, Halasana, even doing Halasana and then dropping over here. Iyengar is calling it Setu Bandha Sarangasana, but he also says it could be known by the name Uttana Mayurasana. Anyways, the name that my teacher refers to it is Uttana Mayurasana. Because Setu Bandha, it ends up being another pose. Setu Bandhasana is another pose altogether. Anyways, this is the same kind of sequence in Iyengar Yoga. It's a dynamic movement. What's the speed, though? I would ask. So I'll stop share. Let me just go back to show that page again, just to compare. So you see. And then also look at, here's my representation of Surya Namaskar positions. This is M with this prone prostration, or F, the child's pose prostration. What I also demonstrate is the lead-in sequence. You see, this is something that Ramaswamy teaches too. If one is not to do weight-bearing positions in the transition to come to sit down, he indicates that one can do an alternate lead-in where you simply come to squat down and then sit straight away as possible. And then you could perform Paschimottanasana or whatever seated posture you're doing. So he gives this as an option. You could bookend the floor posture, starting in Samastiti and ending in Samastiti, without having to do complex weight-bearing transitional sequences anyways. Otherwise, you can do it, which is similar to what you would see in Yogamala by Joyce or Yoga Makaranda by Krishnamacharya, the professor himself. So Ekam inhale, Dve exhale, and then Trini, this third position, Chatwari, exhale, Chaturanga Dandasana, Pancha, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, Shat, exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And then the following exhale, you can hold the breath out and walk or jump forward to come sit forward. So that's Sapta. And then Ashto, stretch the spine, and then Nava is the state of the position. And you come to Paschimottanasana. Otherwise, here are all these variations in symmetrical seated postures. Posterior stretch, that's what's indicated by Paschima Uttana. Otherwise, what's given is the return sequence. Either you do it with the jumping sequence, or you simply come through to a squat and then simply come up to standing. Or, like I said, Nava would have been the state of Paschimottanasana. Otherwise, you there would be what's it called? Dasha to stretch the spine, and then exhale, lower the arms, and then Ekadasha Chaturanga Dandasana, Dvadasha Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, and Trayodasha Adho Mukha Svanasana. And then Chaturdasha, the squat, and then Panchadasha, Uttanasana, and then finally Shodasha, 16th position. Inhale, come all the way up, and then finally exhale, Samastiti. So it's in fact 16 vinyasas. Earlier I miscounted. I think I counted up to 17, but of course Paschimottanasana is 16 vinyasas. So Paschimottanasana itself has a sequence. There's a twisted variation. You can bend back. There's even the Urdhva Mukha, the upward looking Paschimottanasana. Each asana has a vinyasa krama, right? And not just the sequence of samastiti and then coming back. I mean, each posture has variations. Each posture has vinyasa, the sequence built in. It has you can twist in it, you can bend back. You could bend forward, you could twist, you could bend back. You could do all these movements in a single position, like the Tadasana sequence that Ramaswamy teaches. You could just be standing with the feet together and do a variety of movements that are not found in the Ashtanga Vinyasa series. You could be standing with the feet together in Samastiti and then raise your arms, do arm variations that work on the accessory muscles related to the breathing apparatus. And then you can do spinal movements, bending back. That's Purvatana. You can do lateral movements, that's Parshva. You can do the twisting movements, that's Parivritti. You can bend forward, that's the Paschima, so that's Paschimottanasana. So that's the forward, the flexion of the spine. And you can even work on bending of the knees, coming to the squatting position. Paschasana occurs as part of that, standing on the toes, stretching of the ankles as such. That's all stuff you can do with the feet together. So like that's just in Samastiti, doing like a Tadasana sequence. Each asana has a sequence, and I'm not just saying Samastiti start and Samastiti end. Of course, it's implied. Otherwise, you can alter it like so. You don't have to do the weight-bearing aspects. Like I said, Ramaswamy teaches this as an alternate, and like Upavishta Konasana, it has more to it than simply what we see in Ashtanga Vinyasa. You can bend forward, you can bend to the side, you can twist, you can even bend back like a counter pose from Upavishta Konasana. Like I said, this is not something you see in Ashtanga Vinyasa. I actually haven't seen the Purvatana movement in Upavishta Konasana in Iyengar yoga classes I've taken, neither. Although the Parshva and the Parivritti variations we do see in Iyengar yoga in any case. The return sequence, of course. So if I stop share, so in regard to the speed in the Iyengar dynamic movement, like we saw similar to the Surya Namaskar, I wanted to just represent the Halasana Paschimottanasana sequence. This is how typically you would see it in Iyengar yoga. So it's quite fast. I'm not sure why, but anyways. The way you would see it in Vinyasa Krama, maybe I'll move this stuff here. I'll try to move it slowly so you would probably see. Where is it? You would slowly inhale, raise the arms, take at least 5 seconds to do so. Then exhale, slowly bending forward. Take at least 5 seconds to do so, to complete the movement. And then inhale, slowly come out, and using the same inhalation, roll the spine down. Don't be afraid to flex the spine slightly as you roll the spine down. You don't have to see, she doesn't do so. She just sort of swings the legs back. It's not quite what we were doing. Sorry, I'm going in the wrong direction with this stuff. So inhale, raise the arms, then exhale, slowly coming to Paschimottanasana. Went too fast. And then going on. So inhale to slowly come out, and using the same inhale to roll the spine down, coming to lie completely supine. Once you're supine, then you can begin the exhale, where you slowly, with control, take the legs up and over. It's meant to be a slow movement in Vinyasa Krama. I'm not sure why it's done so quickly in Iyengar Yoga. Of course, they're indicating this is for a children's class, so it could make sense moving at a certain pace for the children's class. In any case, it's different when you're talking about Vinyasa Krama, particularly if we're talking in regards to for adults. It's always about long breathing at that point. And then slowly inhale, lower the spine down, vertebra by vertebra, carefully with control, lowering the legs down before the trunk comes up. She's doing it simultaneously. We have to come to the supine, Suptasana Sthiti, the supine position, before we begin to exhale and slowly come up to a seated position and come forward. From the supine position, coming up and forward to Paschimottanasana. And then subsequently following with inhale, slowly coming up to seated and rolling the spine back. See, this is a pace. Then exhale. One would take the legs up once your trunk is already down and over Halasana at the end of your exhale. Then inhale, slowly rolling the spine down, and with control lowering the legs down. Don't be in a hurry to raise the trunk up, not as she's doing. Continuing to exhale, the same exhale, coming all the way forward, Paschimottanasana. Anyways, I'll stop share of this. This goes on like that. So that's the pace as I'm dictating it. That's the actual pace in Vinyasa Krama. This is quite fast in Iyengar Yoga. This is not sped up either. It's really the pace. It looks sped up, but it isn't. There's another example. You know that twisted Paschimottanasana? Here's another example. I'll share screen. So this is the pace that one can do a dynamic movement in Iyengar Yoga. So it's kind of a rapid exhalation even to get there. the breathing is different. She's very close to the feet at this point. I wonder why she wouldn't just hold the feet at that point. In any case, I know they use the props sometimes to convey a certain sensation that you wouldn't otherwise get without the props. It can sometimes even intensify by using the props. It's not always just like a support like such. But in any case, just that rapid movement, just to give an example, that's what you might see in Iyengar yoga. Otherwise, I could go back to something like this. This is my representation of the Vinyasa Krama to Paschimottanasana and Purvottanasana. So you'll see the difference in the pace. Inhale, raise the arms up. Exhale, slowly bending forward, Uttanasana. Inhale there. Exhale, slowly bend the knees, coming to Utkatasana. If you need to raise the heels at this point, you could. The palms are down. Inhale there. Hold the breath in. Walk or jump back to Chaturanga Dandasana. Exhale. Then inhale, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. Exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Wardrobe malfunction. Stay there for a breath. Now you can look forward on inhale and then exhale, bend the knees, hold the breath out, and walk or jump forward, coming through to sit. Straighten the legs, inhale, exhale, lower down. Dandasana. So that's Sapta Ashto. Inhale, raise the arms up. Exhale, bend forward. Paschima Uttanasana. That would be Nava, the ninth position in any case. Inhale, come out. Exhale, lower the arms down. Just as a demonstration, one breath. Inhale to lift up to the counter pose, Purvottanasana. Exhale, slowly lower down. Inhale, slowly. You can exhale to compress the body, then place the palms down. Inhale, hold the breath in to lift up and come back. Exhale in Chaturanga Dandasana. Inhale, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. Exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And hold the breath out to jump forward, stay in the squat, and then inhale, straighten the legs. Stay there on exhale, Uttanasana. And then inhale, slowly coming all the way up. Exhale, slowly lower your arms. Samastiti. So I'll stop share of that. In any case, what's something else here? We could actually, I want to show you the daughter, the youngest daughter of Krishnamacharya's. Again, demonstrating Paschimottanasana. See how she comes to sit on the ground for here, actually. Another way of doing. So many variations, right? So here we go. She just simply came down to sit. No fireworks. So that's from the lying down position to come to Paschimottanasana. So here that's like a twisted Paschimottanasana. So the eyes closed. Counter movement. He repeats it. And Dandasana, she had the hands on the floor at that point. So that's Sri Shubha Mohan Kumar, the youngest daughter of the professors. It's the same spirit as Deshakachara, as Ramaswamy, as A.G. Mohan, as Sri Shubha's brother Sri Bhashyam. The same spirit, long breathing, slow movements. Then I want to show maybe one last thing here. Back to the PDF. How did we saw Krishnamacharya and Yogamakaranda. This photograph actually appears in his later book, Yogasana Galu. It's a picture of him, more elderly, anyways. Here is from Yogasana Galu. Dandasana is the first posture among the sitting asanas. Vyasa has spoken highly of this posture in the Yoga Sutra Bhashya, the commentary on the Yoga Sutra. First part, see photograph number 1 shown in this book. Procedure to practice: place a soft blanket not less than 6 feet in length. Sit down facing eastern direction with legs stretching straight forward and lift both hands above the head, like so. So the starting position would have been hands down. Left and right forearms are aligned with the respective left and right ears. So keeping the head down and even beyond the ears, like we're aligned with the ears as such. Chin lowered like Jana or Bandha. And you saw that even in the people in the Deshkachar teachings that I showed. Whenever the arms were raised, the head was not raising. Without bending the elbows. Hand fingers are interlocked or interlaced tightly in such a manner that the palm is facing upwards. And then the chin is lowered into the chest by bending the neck. The 2 feet are joined together with the heels touching the floor and the toes stretched upwards. Without bending the knees, keep the thigh muscles stretched tightly, that's the hamstrings, and hold the back erect. Softly close the eyelids, and as explained before, and take 6 deep inhalation and exhalations. After exhalation, pull in the region of the abdomen, and so pull it in all the way into the navel. During inhalation, the chest is to be expanded. Breath should not be held for more than a second. At this point, in any case, later he indicates Kumbhaka. In the Yoga Shastra, exhalation is known as Rechaka and inhalation is referred to as Puraka. Kumbhaka is retention of breath. When we are practicing breathing like this, our stomach, neck, head, and chest should not be moving up and down. Rechaka has to be longer than Puraka and also must be subtle. 1 Rechaka, 1 Puraka, and 1 Kumbhaka make 1 Avrita. Initially, only 6 avritas are enough and must be increased over time. 1 round, in other words. 1 round of breath. So 6 rounds eventually. In this asana, the body remains straight like a stick, danda, the staff pose, right? And strengthens the spine, hands and legs, and therefore is called dandasana. It eliminates the indigestion and rheumatic conditions. During each breath, we should be practicing remembrance of God. So here he's even indicating that with the breathing, he's highlighting it's with the breath, is with the breathing, to also have a devotional quality to the practice. Of course, not everyone believes in God, and Krishnamacharya sometimes would say for atheists, they can think of bhakti or devotion as purely love. The atheist can appreciate the sun in any case as the one that is serving us, mankind on this planet. So we are surrendering and having a devotional attitude towards this benevolent force. It's a physical force that you can appreciate. He also would say just having reverence for some authority larger than yourself, your parents even, can be this for an atheist. He would talk along these lines if a person doesn't believe in God. In any case, he would also say if one is open to the discussion about the individual consciousness rather than this universal Godhead, he would say if someone is open to the discussion around the individual consciousness, the one that is the witness to all of our worldly doings, one can think of that even. In any case, here, in all respects, this asana follows part 1, except that the palms of the 2 hands are now behind the back. In addition, both the palms are near the hips on the floor. So this is the classical Dandasana. You see Krishnamacharya is photographed with the hands on the floor for Dandasana, different than what Deshkachar pupils tend to do, just a different strokes. The elbows must be straight and Kumbhaka must be performed after exhalation, Bahya Kumbhaka. Please study the photo. This posture is easy for obese, as they have a hard time keeping the forearms up due to impediment from the lower half of their body. So it's easier to do Dandasana supported than Dandasana unsupported near Lamba. Then there's Paschimottanasana. Although this posture has been practiced by yogis from ancient times, Swapmarama Yogi, the author of Hatha Yoga Pradipika, has praised this posture. Practice. Please study the photo and practice. From Dandasana, take a deep Rechaka, pull in the stomach, keep the fingers interlaced. That is from this position here. And slowly bend forward, wrapping the fingers around the legs, or rather the feet, with the palms facing on the outside. Rest the forehead on the kneecaps or slightly beyond. Perform Rechaka and Puraka in the posture now, and keep the knees stretched straight without bending, starting with 3 Rechaka and Puraka on the first week. Keep increasing by 1 every week for a maximum of 12 avritis, 12 rounds of breath in the Paschimottanasana. This would be probably about 5 minutes. You see, this is an indication Ramaswamy also gives that one can stay for, let's say, 12 breaths, and then now that might be about 5 minutes staying in the posture. It's one of those postures that he would say one can stay a long time. The Hatha Pradipika even says vaseta, stay. Another important procedures, of course, like I mentioned in one of my previous videos, the 2 inversions as Viparita Karani mudras, Shirshasana and Sarvakasana, and then Mahamudra, also praised as an important long holding static mudra position. This state is called Paschimottanasana. After this, come back up from the posture and take rest. So benefits. Pranavayu has 2 states called Purva Vahini Gati and Paschima Vahini Gati. Purva Vahini Gati is wheezing or difficulty in breathing, such as asthma. This results from indigestion. People's health deteriorates, resulting in enlargement of stomach. In Paschima Vahini Gati, the movement is behind the Muladhara chakra. Enlarged stomach is made smaller by increasing the digestive fire, that's Jatara Agni, like what is stated in the Hatha Pradipika. Destroying indigestion and extending Rechaka without wheezing. Isn't this enough? One should not practice this on a full stomach, of course. This posture is forbidden for pregnant women. And then the opposite, Purvattanasana. This is also called as the rejoinder to Paschimottanasana. It's the opposite, counter pose. When pain is experienced due to a particular type of body situation, space between bones, movement of pulse nodules, and discrepancy in musculature, practicing these counter poses will alleviate such pains. This will help set the junctions, nodules, and muscles into their original spaces. That means it will realign the body into original state. This secret was not known for many years. The reason? Not receiving advice from a guru. So, of course, we see Paschimottanasana written about in the Hatha Pradipika, but doesn't indicate the counter pose. One might say it can be inferred, but Krishnamacharya is saying this sort of method was something passed down from within the lineages. So such nuance might not have been written in the texts themselves, and people just try to bypass lineage learning and just go to the Shastras, they might not understand the nuance that one would gain from lineage teachings. Anyways, he goes on, after experiencing this type of pain, people are deterred from practicing yoga. They have been hesitating and becoming more reluctant to take up yoga practice. Even though they may be breaking limbs and bleeding from sports injuries, they don't hesitate in spite of spending lots of money on sports. They will continue to play limp and make merry. Hang on. The Kali influence is said to be the main reason for the disappearance of ancient Indian arts and sciences. In this way, every yoga posture has a counter pose. If we learn this practice from a guru and yoga practitioners promote and teach others, it does not cause any harm to people. The yogic sciences will not disappear. So procedure, please see photo number 5. This, I don't see number 5 here. From Paschimottanasana position, inhale and lift both hands straight up, and while exhaling deeply, take the shoulders slowly behind the back and place the palms of the hands on the floor about 1 foot distance. So going from Dandasana, I think this would probably be indicated as 5 in the original text. And then raising, so from Salamba Dandasana, supported Dandasana, inhale, raise your arms, Niralamba Dandasana, and then after exhale, lower your palms a foot or so behind you, like is indicated, and then inhale, raise your hips up to Purvattanasana. Once you've completed exhale, lower the hips, and then you can return to sit upright in Dandasana. So what does he say here? Placing the hands on the floor about a foot distance from the hips with the fingers facing forward. Similar to the second step in Dandasana, push the chest forward and do a deep Puraka Kumbhaka, pressing the heels and the palms tightly against the ground. Lift the entire body in a straight line and drop the neck backwards. Close the eyes and keep still for at least 5 seconds, holding the breath for 5 seconds. This is Purvottanasana position. After this, bend the neck to bring the chin to the chest, coming back to Jalandhara Bandha. And exhale and place the body down. In this way, practice 3 times in the first week and gradually increase to 6 repetitions. Benefits: eliminates pain at the back of the body, eradicates fragility in the forearms and neck. This posture is reciprocal to Paschimottanasana, since in Paschimottanasana, the entire body movement and position consists of bending forward. In exhalation, Rechaka mode with the head bent forward, Purvottanasana in the riposte with the body movement and position, in contrast, is not bent but straight, upward facing with hands behind in the mode of inhalation, Puraka. And then there's some variations here. Another variation like Chatushparapitam, or you can do asymmetrically, one leg in Ardha Padma, half lotus, or in Ramaswamy Sir's book, you see 1 foot up, or there's Navasana, another variation. Anyways, I won't go through all of these descriptions. Mostly I wanted to look at the Paschimottanasana and Purvottanasana. But I like how he's saying afterwards it becomes easier. Like, this posture is called Chatushparapitam. This will be hard for a couple weeks. Afterwards becomes easier. Must be practiced slowly and patiently. I like that. So there's no rush, nothing to be forced. The body's not pushed into the position in a strenuous way. Don't strain the body, in other words. Take care, move mindfully. In Yoga Shastra, our body is divided into 3 parts: Urdhva, or upper part, Madhya, or middle part, and the Adho, lower part. Above the neck is Urdhva, neck to reproductive organs is Madhya, and from there to the sole of the feet is Adho. One can practice Chatushpada Pita as Tripada Pita, placing 1 foot in half lotus, like so. Anyways, something else that I'd like to show is just quickly Krishnamacharya doing the Vinyasa Krama to and from Paschimottanasana. So this is how it is shown in Yoga Makaranda, 1934. So the center of the sequence is Paschimottanasana, right? And then this is how the photos of an older Krishnamacharya as appear in Yogasana Galu, which was published. Initially, it was published in 1941, but there were a few editions. The last edition, I think, was 1981. So the photographs of him as an older gentleman, of course, were added in a later edition. But you can see, just to compare how he's performing as a younger man here in Yoga Makaranda to an older man. Inhaling, raising the arms, exhale, slowly coming down to Uttanasana. And then there's the Chaturanga Dandasana, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, and Adho Mukha Svanasana. Interesting enough, the manner as shown in Yoga Makaranda with the head down like Jalandhara Bandha, this is the manner in which Ramaswamy Sir teaches this. He tends to teach it with this position. But obviously it's possible. There's variations. What is your intention in practice, right? Jump through, sit in Dandasana, inhale, raise your arms, exhale, bend forward, Paschimottanasana. Inhale, raise your arms, come up. Exhale, lower your hands down behind you. And then inhale, lift up, counter pose. Then exhale, you can lower your hands. Inhale, raise your arms, and exhale, you can lower your hands to Dandasana. And then if you wanted to, you could jump back to Chaturanga Dandasana. Inhale, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. Exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And then hold the breath out. Walk or jump forward to Uttanasana. Exhale. And then inhale, lift all the way up. And then exhale, lower your hands, Samastiti. So the photos of Krishnamacharya, he doesn't show the squat like Ramaswamy is indicating, but of course it's a helpful step if one includes that extra step. It replaces the Trini that one would typically do in an Ashtanga Vinyasa context, or in jumping forward rather to the squat, landing with the bent knees, and then straightening the legs to Uttanasana. Otherwise, if we go back to this notion of the Surya Namaskar with this full prostration, as Ramaswamy sir is emphasizing, and of course you saw this prostration in the photograph in the documentary of Krishnamacharya during the event of his centenary celebrations. Anyway, I put these photos together, including the extra step. You see, like the way Deshakacharya indicates, he's not typically emphasizing jumping necessarily, especially for older individuals. So the step back becomes, taking 1 foot back is one of these steps out of 12 in that case. So instead of doing the squat, what you might call Trini, which is rather the inhale, look up, Ramaswamy rather does the squat. Deshakacharya rather does 1 step back, explicitly take a step back, and that being a position unto itself. Then you can exhale and come to Chaturanga Dandasana and lie completely prone. Inhale, stretch your arms forward, palms together. That's the actual Namaskar position. Then exhale, Chaturanga Dandasana. Inhale, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. So I indicate the way Ramaswamy typically instructs us to do, to head down. And then exhale, Adho Mukha Svanasana. You could take a breath there. And then exhale, hold the breath out, walk or jump forward, landing with the bent knees. Then inhale, Uttanasana. You can exhale there. And then inhale, come all the way up. Exhale, lower the hands, Samastiti. So just to show this, if we compare, again, I want to go back. I'll actually share a screen that like so. So here, the middle of the sequence, we're bending down and jumping back in order to lie prone. This is the middle of the sequence, what we're aiming towards in the Surya Namaskar, the full prostration. And then there's a means to get back up to standing where we started, right? So it's a vinyasa krama, a progression towards where we're leading. Every position can have a mantra, can be with the kumbhaka even. And then there's a subsequent return to the starting position. Incidentally, if we go back to this document I put together, this first page especially, the way Krishnamacharya is indicating in the 1934 Yoga Makaranda, the middle of the sequence is the state of the asana, Nava in this case. The 9th position of this sequence is the state of the asana, Paschimottanasana in question. So it proceeds with a lead-in, a vinyasa krama, progression to get there, and then a subsequent retrogression, if you will, to come back to the starting position. So either explicit or implied, one begins in samastiti and then one ends in samastiti. So similarly, you can look to this. What Krishnamacharya is doing is that the Surya Namaskar, one needs to come to the prostration position. So one can come through a sequence to get there and then a sequence to come back up to the starting position. And similarly, every asana itself, every floor asana, can have a similar vinyasa krama, if you will. The state of the asana in question here is Paschimottanasana. So we come through a sequence in order to come to the floor to do this. And it's all governed by the breath, of course. And like he said, link breath with God. There's even a quote of Krishnamacharya's that brings in this sort of a visualization that you inhale and God is coming to you. You hold the breath and God stays with you. You exhale, you give back to God, and you hold the breath out after exhale, and that's your offering. Like this sort of logic, this sort of thinking. Like he was very godly oriented. So for persons that are inclined to think along these lines, this can work for you. So vinyasa it's all about breathing, right? Being with the quality of the movement through this long breathing, right? As you can see. So here, the state of the asana, there's a lead in, a progression to this asana, and then there's this balancing, counterbalancing, if you will, to come back to the state of balance. And it's just to compare to this notion in Surya Namaskar. That's why Surya Namaskar is built into each asana, like Paschimottanasana. And like I said, you don't have to explicitly do weight-bearing transitional postures. Ramaswamy gives an alternate way of doing. Like I said, it's more so about the breathing. And then if we go back to here, there's the process to get there. Even this is a vinyasa krama. Dandasana, raise the arms on inhale, exhale, bend forward, Paschimottanasana, we've arrived. And then inhale, raise your arms up, exhale, lower your arms, but this time, place the hands behind you. Now the counterbalancing to come back to a state of balance. The counter pose, inhale, raise your hips up, and look back, throw your head back, exhale, lower your hips down, and take your chin down, and come to Dandasana, starting position. All right, that's a vinyasa krama in and of itself. You don't have to do this. So this is what Krishnamacharya is referring to when he says, don't do asanas without vinyasa. It's more so about the breathing. That's all I'm trying to say. Anyways, I think this presentation has been long enough, and I'll end the meeting here. So I'd like to thank you all for going through this all with me. I hope you appreciated it, and I will also conclude with the Kshama Shloka. Kshama Shloka, to ask for forgiveness for any errors in the recitation of the Vedic mantras. So I'll chant that now. Yadakshatabada brashtam matrahinantu yadbhavet tatsarvam kshamyatam deva narayana namostite visargabindu matrani padapataksharaani cha yunani chaktraktani kshamasva purushottama kshamasva purushottama kshamasva purushottama. Thanks again for joining, and let me know what you think in the comments. Hope you appreciated it, and stay tuned for any future videos I may share for you. If you want to get in touch, feel free to get in touch. If you have questions, I'm always happy to share, and I teach this vinyasa krama too, if you want to get in touch as well for that. So anyways, thanks again, and Have a good day, and until next time.